Thank you for listening to Discovering the Scriptures with Dr. Peter John. Currently, we are in Daniel chapter 7, verse 20. Let's read the verse we're studying in the King James Version first. Quote, "And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows." Unquote. Now, we need to look at this one in context. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. The chapter is 7. The paragraph is 19 through 20. So let's read that together in King James. Quote, "Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows." Unquote. Let's continue on. 7:21. Quote, "I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them." 22. "Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom." Unquote. Now, let's take a look at this verse in the Young's Literal Translation to see what we can draw from this verse. Quote, "And concerning the 10 horns that are in its heads, and of the other that came up, and before which 3 have fallen, even of that horn that hath eyes, and a mouth speaking great things, and whose appearance is great above its companions." Unquote. There's a lot here. What do we have going on here? Let's go ahead and take a look at this and parse it out. Okay, with such a terrible verse, it's kind of amazing that when Daniel writes this in the Aramaic, the court language, that he actually writes this in a calm way. And you can tell just by looking at the very first word in the Interlinear Bible. Came up. Now this one here is a verb. It's quail, perfect, third person, feminine singular. So he's not all hyper and active. He's had time to think about this, I'm sure. Which, that's a pronoun relative, and the other horn, conjunctive, adjective, feminine singular. On its head, pronoun. It's preposition, I'm sorry. Noun, masculine singular construct, third person feminine. That were, pronoun relative. 10, number, feminine singular. Horns, the, noun, feminine plural determinate. And conjunctive, preposition, this, pronoun, common single. And namely, horn, conjunctive, noun, feminine singular determinate. 3, number, feminine singular. Before which, preposition, third person singular. From, preposition, fell. Now, here we go again. It's conjunctive, it's quell, it's perfect, third person feminine plural. He's writing casually. He's not intensive, he's not hyper, he's calmly writing this. Why? Let's continue. Then, preposition, greater, adjective, masculine singular, and whose appearance he was. So this is a conjunctive, noun, masculine singular construct, third person, feminine singular. Pompous words, adjective, feminine plural. Which spoke, plural. Pael, participle, masculine singular. And a mouth, conjunctive, noun, masculine, singular, which had, preposition, third person, feminine, singular, and eyes, conjunctive, noun, feminine, plural. His fellows, noun, feminine, singular, construct, third person, feminine, singular. So what we have here, let's read it in the raw. This, and namely, horn, 3, before which, from, fell. Then greater, and whose appearance was, pompous words, which spake, and a mouth, which had, and eyes, his fellow. So what we got going on here? Well, we see that Daniel's writing very casually. We see that he is continuing on with this theme about this beast that has teeth of iron and nails of brass, and he devours and breaks in pieces and stamps the residue with his feet. We see that in verse 19. We see that he makes war with the saints and prevails. We see in verse 20 that he speaks pompous words. And yet, Daniel writes about this casually. Why? He's already seen rulers with pompous words, and so have we. And they became naught. They also became nothing, and they also died. So, their pompous words became muted. They are like dust in the wind. Their lives are like vapors. They come and they go. Their pompous words, their hateful things of God, who cares? They're gone. Yes, they make war on us. But what does this have here for us to see for the end times? Is this speaking about stuff that has happened or will happen? Now remember, when the saints were looking for Jesus, they all had it wrong. So I could read you all the stuff that these guys come up with and say, well, these 10 horns are these 10 kingdoms. But were they? Are they? Or are we to see them? Let's read what John Gill in the ancient commentaries had to say about this. Quote, and of the 10 horns, that is, Daniel desired to know the truth of the 10 horns, or the meaning of them, which they signified, and who they pointed at, of which in Daniel 7:7 it is added. So let's read 7:7. Quote, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured in breaking pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Unquote. Continuing. That were in his head, observing the situation of them, thought the horns of a beast could hardly be thought to be elsewhere. And of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell. Particularly, he was very desirous to know the meaning of the single horn, which rose up from the rest, and before which 3 of the other horns fell, being plucked up by the roots. Even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake great things. We'll take a look at Daniel 7, verse 8, reading from the King James Bible. Quote, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Unquote. Continuing on with John Gill's commentary, whose look was more stout than his fellows, than the other beast, or rather than the other horns, either than his fellow bishops, claiming an authority over them, as being universal bishop, or than the kings and princes of the earth, setting himself above all that is called God, emperors and kings, taking to himself all power in heaven and on earth, a power to depose kings and absorb their subjects from allegiance to them, and even over the consciences of men, so that his look is more bold and prudent than others, as well as more fierce and terrible, threatening kings and kingdoms with his bulls, anthems, and edicts, or whose appearance is greater than his fellows, in pomp and splendor, making a great show and figure than the kings of the earth, and claiming a superiority over them. Unquote. You see, John Gill doesn't even tell us that these are the 10 kingdoms that these were. No, but our modern know-it-all commentaries say, well, these were the 10 kings, and they put them all down. Where are they getting this? Is it in the Bible? I think not. Do they want to look like they're the biggest authority and put it all down? What if they're wrong? Your ancient commentaries didn't do that. So, has it happened, or is it happening? Is this great horn something that's taking place today? Now, mind you, I like to be very objective about things. I'm a little biased because I do come from the French Huguenots. If you're not familiar with that, the Catholics back in the 1600s drove them out of France and persecuted them and put them to death. And so my relatives came here to America. And so I'm a little bit biased against Roman popes, especially when they say that they're next to God and they don't make any faults. Well, we know that's definitely not true. And we definitely know that they're a man and they do have faults and they're sometimes stupid. So, let's not hold them up. They're not Jesus. They're not the great creator and leader of the church throughout the world. You are what God's interested in. You are the one He's chosen to draw close to. You are the one who's brought you here to learn this Bible. He brought you. So let's walk through this Bible and let's see what God has in store for us. Okay? If you like this, hit the like button. If you need prayer, please leave a comment for us. Once they're approved, they'll show up. I'm having a lot of people put a lot of really whacked out things in the comments, so I'm having to approve them. And also hit the little bell button and the little subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you'll know when more is coming along. And tell others. So we'll walk through this Bible, verse by verse. And please keep me in your prayer that God will keep me in good health, so I don't suffer any more strokes, so I don't have any more problems with my speech. Thank you, and God bless.